curious. I actually have some clients who have type 1 diabetes, and one of the things that I find pretty common with them is anxiety in terms of their kind of continual monitoring of levels and an anxiety that they're going to fall outside of the range. Is that an experience that you've seen in the people that you've worked with?
I suffered anxiety. And for me, the cause of my anxiety was not necessarily diabetes itself or the condition that I was having to live with, but the annual visits to my diabetes clinic. I hated those visits. I dreaded those visits because every time I went there and my blood sugar wasn't in good control, despite all my efforts, in fact, extreme efforts, but without the proper guidance, I just couldn't do it, couldn't keep it under control. And the implication was that, Nairi, you're not doing well. So the blame was on me. I actually would go to the clinic for my annual checkup or whatever, and I just dread the moment my name would be called. I just didn't want to go there because I had nothing to say to them. Look, my HbA1c is just stuck at 7.8. In fact, it used to be higher, like 9.9. I've got the conversions here. So 9.8 is what I remember. That's 84 millimoles over liter. So that's pretty high. 9.8% is a very high HbA1c. But and they would tell me I'm not doing well enough. They would tell me I'm not using all the options on my pump, insulin pump. I've mentioned this in one of my podcasts before, but one day my diabetes specialist nurse, who was looking at all my blood sugars, because I would have to keep a manual record before the CGM. She told me, Nairi, you have, so you've eaten that pizza, and you have to be more smart taking insulin for that pizza. Maybe you should split your insulin injection. Maybe you should take 20% of it 30 minutes before you eat the pizza. And then while you're eating, take another, I don't know, the rest of the other 20%, and take the remaining 1 hour after you've eaten. Try out different formulas. And you're not being, in fact, these are her words. She said, you're not being proactive enough. And I've hated the word proactive since then. I have not used the word proactive. I've joked about it when I use the word, or I hear anyone say proactive. Oh my goodness, it brings anxiety to me. It's the worst feeling when you make someone feel useless, that they're a failure. They're having to live with a disease which is difficult to control. And the implication that it's their fault that they're not able to control it, and you're not telling them, remove the carbohydrates and you're going to have flat lines, which I do now. But instead of giving me advice that works, they would just teach me different so-called smart ways to take my insulin to cover the 100 grams of sugar I've just ingested from a pizza or a pasta dish. That's a lot of sugar. That is not something any type 1 can. There might be some really genius type 1s out there who are doing a good job on a high carb diet, but I certainly couldn't. So those were the times that I would feel anxiety. And I think what I love about eating low carbohydrate or eating a sort of ketogenic way now is that at least one variable, which is the diet, that has an impact on blood sugars, at least I've got that under control. The other variables are, with women's monthly cycle, well, I have no control over that one. That comes and goes every month. I can't control that one. Other hormones I can't control. For example, sleep has impact on blood sugars. And that is something I can control. And I do my very best to get my good quality 8-hour sleep every single night. I go to bed early and I don't compromise my sleep no matter what. So Exercise, for example, has an impact on blood sugars, and I approach it wisely. So I anticipate blood sugar rises depending on the type of exercise, or drops. So I go to my exercise prepared. So all these elements that have an impact on blood sugar, if I can have some kind of control over those, then I do, to make life easier on me. This is why I do the low carb sort of way of eating, because all those elements I mentioned, from exercise to sleep to stress, etc., all of those have an impact on blood sugars. But the biggest element, the biggest player of them all, is your diet. And so if I can control that somehow, then I've won the game. Really. I mean, I've got my diabetes under control. Doesn't mean that, I'm never going to have any fluctuations. I'm never going to have, I've got everything under control. And now manually, I'm somehow able to replicate non-diabetics working pancreas. Well, no, not really. I mean, I do get highs and lows every now and again, but at least I know that they're not drastic. They're not severe. That I'm not going to need anyone when I go to bed. I can sleep well without worrying that, I might actually drop into some severe hypoglycemia and need someone's support. I've been in those situations before when I used to be on a high carb diet, because high carbohydrate diet requires a lot of insulin. When you're taking massive doses of insulin, a crash is inevitable. Your blood sugars are going to crash. So when they're going to crash, you're shaking, you're dizzy, and you're hungry. You're ravenously hungry, so you just want to eat again. And you don't want to eat steak or broccoli. You want to eat carbohydrates again to raise your blood sugar back up. And so you eat carbohydrates, and then they rise right up, they shoot up. And then after every rise, there is a drop, and then a rise and a drop. And it's just a nightmare to live with. If that doesn't cause anxiety on its own, on anyone, diabetic or not, or I don't know what does. But blood sugars are closely related. Correct me on that if I'm wrong, Stephen, but from my understanding is that blood sugar fluctuations are closely related to mood swings and feeling of hangry, as they said, or hunger and anger combined.